Coming up next on the Voice of Alabama Politics, guns on campus. Also, the V team takes a look at Baiting Bambi. And Speaker Mike Hubbard thinks he set a trap.
Admiral, we've got enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap! It's a trap!
Also, whose cat? Someone get your cat.
Wrong. Now get your cat. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Britt. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today we have a special edition of The V. Susan, it has been a very compelling week. We learned a lot of things that we did not know. Great drama with close friends and intimates. And we're here today to try to clarify for our viewers what happened, the current events of last week, and how they fit into the bigger picture of the Mike Hubbard case.
Because it is complicated.
It is complicated.
It is a little complicated.
It's very complicated.
And a lot of people are really confused about this.
Yes.
So,
well, we hope to dispel any confusion and get this cleared up for our viewers. This week, we learned that our former colleague, Baron Coleman, was a confidential informant to the Attorney General's office, not only in the Mike Hubbard situation, but in others unknown. We do know that for 3 years, Mr. Coleman, our friend, was involved in giving them confidential information. This all came to light after Barron delivered an affidavit to Mike Hubbard's defense team implying that there was prosecutorial misconduct or some type of misconduct on the part of Matt Hart. This was startling to most of us because for the last 2 years, Baron Coleman has been Hubbard's perhaps most vocal opponent. And for him to have met with the prosecution, the defense, and given them this startling affidavit is almost unthinkable for most of us. I mean, your reaction to that?
the reaction of most people that were somewhat close to Barron is everybody feels betrayed by this. The first thing you do is start looking back at, when did this all happen? Why did it happen? That we'll never know. But it is apparent that, Barron, for some reason or another, decided to go over to the Hubbard team and drop this affidavit with them so they could refile the prosecutorial misconduct. And
this has led to a new filing, a renewal of the filing in prosecutorial misconduct, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding. They filed that motion with Barron's affidavit. The prosecution responded with affidavits from Jack Campbell, John Rice, and Sandy Toomer, also the head of ALEA, Spencer Collier, and a special agent, Jack Wilson. Baron Coleman and Jack Campbell have been partners for 2 years. They host a radio show together. In Jack Campbell's affidavit, he basically says that everything in Barron's affidavit is untrue.
He does. And what people have to understand here, Barron and Jack were partners, and they ran a campaign for Sandy Toomer, and John Rice was involved in that. Now, when Barron first filed his affidavit, it indicated that all of those people had conducted a whisper campaign with grand jury information provided to Coleman by Matt Hart. And all of these, the reason all these affidavits are attached is to say that no, indeed, we did not get grand jury information. The whole time he told us that he had no grand jury information. In fact, in the response from the state, it even notes that on this show, Mr. Coleman said he had no grand jury information.
And that's what he's maintained in the affidavits all along. The other very interesting thing is that in his affidavit, Coleman said that he was contacted by law enforcement. That didn't turn out to be the whole truth, did it?
That's why Aaliyah and ABI got involved, because, you know, in lawyer speak, the way he was contacted is maybe he called and left a message and they called him back, and he can say that's contacted. Not in mine, in your world. But what the truth came out when these other affidavits from Spencer Collier and
Jack Wilson.
Thank you. Jack Wilson came out. It said that no, indeed, Mr. Coleman went to Aaliyah, asked to speak to Spencer Collier, who was at home at the time. Spencer Collier came down there and told him that he could not alone take his testimony, that he would have to give it to another investigator. So it was initiated, according to, you know, Aaliyah and ABI, by Mr. Coleman, not by them.
Right. And these are sworn affidavits.
Yes, they are.
That have been filed with the court in Lee County. Now, they are saying that this information given to Baron Coleman is grounds to dismiss Hubbard's 23 indictments based on prosecutorial misconduct. Now, there is a grand misunderstanding about prosecutorial misconduct out there. This prosecutorial misconduct has to meet the bar of the Bank of Nova Scotia versus the United States, in which the Supreme Court found that prosecutorial misconduct, dismissing a case for prosecutorial misconduct, the actions of the prosecution must have materially altered or changed the way the grand jury handed down the indictments. In other words, it would have had to be something that Matt Hart or someone did inside the grand jury that changed the way or influenced the way the grand jury acted, right?
Right, and there's another aspect that people are not realizing about this. Prosecutorial misconduct is never tried before a case. It's not a pretrial issue. It's a post-trial issue. There have been no cases where a case was dismissed pre-trial for prosecutorial misconduct. Any of those accusations come after the trial has been completed.
Well, and basically, I've talked to defense attorneys. This 1988 opinion by the Supreme Court basically says, hey, these guys in Nova Scotia did some crazy stuff and maybe some illegal stuff, but it did not materially affect the grand jury's decision to indict.
Plus, also in the motion from the state, it said that anything that was related between Mr. Hart and Mr. Coleman, because he was a confidential informant, comes under privilege.
Yeah.
So that any going to or from, that's all privileged information anyway.
So they've asked the court to seal that motion has been sealed. They want that protected. But I think it's important that even if Coleman's statement proved true, which Jack Campbell says it's not, also John Rice and others, even if it did prove true, it does not rise to the level of prosecutorial misconduct.
And Judge Jacob Walker said that in his courtroom, that unless it directly affected that grand jury basically in those four walls, in their minds, something that caused them to make this decision to indict, it doesn't raise to the standards.
Right. You know, one of the ploys that they've been trying all along is to drag Matt Hart before, get him on the witness stand in order to disqualify him. Now, the Judge Walker, has asked the defense on several occasions, bring me case law showing that should be done. They have yet to do it, right, Susan?
And they've tried to do this. They tried to do it with Sonny Reagan. They tried to do it with Gene Sisson. They've even deposed the Attorney General, and all in an attempt to try to get Matt Hart on the stand so that they can disqualify him. I've got a feeling these guys are a little afraid of him.
Well, Matt Hart is one tough prosecutor. The trial will go forward. I predict no prosecutorial misconduct. That's my thinking.
And it's worth noting that Judge Walker scheduled the hearing for this Coleman affidavit on the same date as the pre-trial. If he thought it was a big deal, he would have scheduled it
That's
another
absolutely
time.
Right. We're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V. That was a special report. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
I'm Richard Shelby, and I approve this message.
What sort of person runs grossly misleading ads about Senator Richard Shelby? Jonathan McConnell was caught cheating in his college elections. He tried to bribe an opponent in his current Senate race. He's facing a possible $10,000 fine for election violations. Jonathan McConnell, already a trail of ethical problems. He's the last thing we need in Washington.
You better sit down. I've actually found one federal program Obama wants to cut: defense spending. He wants to weaken our military. I've got a son in Afghanistan right now. He deserves our support. Richard Shelby's a big voice fighting Obama's cuts, keeping us safe.
Richard Shelby stands up for Alabama every single day.
I'm Richard Shelby, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Welcome, Jonathan.
Great to be here, Bill.
President Pro Tem Del Marsh has said that zero-based budgeting is the way to go for the state. He's a very successful businessman. A lot of businesses use zero-based budgeting. Basically what that is we just wipe the slate clean at the end of the year and we start all over again, where now, currently, we take our budget and we look at last year's budget and we build on that. Susan, there's pros and cons on this.
There are pros and cons. While it sounds very good in concept, in other words, a lot of people, even I've heard agencies say that, well, if we don't spend this money this year, we won't get it next year. And I think that's where they're trying to go with this. However, zero-based budgeting is a very complicated process. It involves all the agencies starting from scratch. Let's, take this to the absurd. Let's say I'm a agency head. I got to try to figure out how many pieces of paper I'm going to use next year. If you get it down to that level, this is going to be a very time-consuming process that, with the agencies already strapped for cash as it is, they're already at minimal funding that they can be at. Where are they going to find the man hours to do this?
That's one of the problems. They say, Jonathan, that zero-based budgeting can require a lot of time. A lot of states use it. Some of them only use it quarterly or every 2 years. But you're familiar with this. You run a business.
In my business, we use something very similar to zero-based budgeting. I know some nonprofit schools in Birmingham that use this at the end of the year. That they start at zero, and there's things that they do, and of course they do that for tax purposes. I agree with Susan. Running a state government is a little bit different, and I think it would cost a lot of money and manpower to try to change from what we've been doing. But there are pros and cons in doing that.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's certainly a way of looking at waste. And these guys are very frustrated because department heads will come in. They don't feel like they're getting full information or enough information. And let's be frank, the bureaucrats don't trust the politicians, and the politicians don't trust the bureaucrats. And there's a good reason that we shouldn't trust any of them, isn't there?
It's to the point. I mean, the frustration between the legislature and the agencies is to the point of SB 69, which we'll cover later, but I mean, it's gotten to the point where the legislature is ready to try to subpoena these people and put them under oath. It's getting so bad.
Right. Well, and the thing is, and we hear it all the time, you got career bureaucrats, Jonathan. I mean, they want to protect some of them are some of the finest people. They care and love our state. There are some that take advantage of the system.
They do. What scares me the most are when an agency says, hey, we've got $10,000 left, what can we spend it on?
Right.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're running a state government, because, well, let's put that $10,000 to the next year and see there may be something that comes up, or let's put it back into the general fund. There are pros and cons, but I think as a taxpayer, that's what scares you the most is people are going to have to go out and some of these folks go out and spend money just to get rid of it.
Right.
Well,
I'm sorry, but the thing is, it doesn't matter what system you use, there's going to be somebody that figures out how to game it.
Well,
That's
sure.
true.
I talked to a former guy that worked in finance for years. He said they used to have incentive-based budgeting, and the incentive was if you don't get your paperwork to me and get your budget in line, I'm going to cut it by half. And we'll start from there. The incentive is you might lose your job if you don't do it right. So, but we've noticed that unfortunately nobody's held accountable over here. I mean, you think about finance and the over $1 million worth of phones that still sit in a warehouse while they buy new phones. Why does Bill Newton and Rex McDowell still have a job?
Yeah.
Why are they?
They wouldn't if they worked for me.
No, I don't get it. I would have incentive. I would save some money by getting rid of Bill Newton. He has $1 million in drop program when he retires. He's got $1 million in the drop.
And we've got phones sitting in a warehouse that we're not
We
using.
should make him buy those phones.
We should. He's got the money. Why not? Let's make him buy them.
And not at the discounted rates. It's full retail.
Retail. You know, what is that? What's that your dad used to say about cash, you know, fetch it on back? What is that?
Yeah, a cash in fist or fetch it on back.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
There you go, Bill. This week, we did look at something that I don't know if there's anything to it or not, but it sure looked crazy. You know, Senator Tom Watley, his fiance, Leslie Waits, is in a lawsuit with Wells Fargo over a piece of property dispute. It started back in 2012. It really got going in earnest about 2014. And she hired, Jonathan, attorney Bubba Grassley from down in Fairhope, who just happens to be Tom Watley's consultant.
You know, I think we should man the ship because something smells fishy here. I'm just saying. You know, when you look at that, you know, and again, that's this thing with attorney-client privilege, and we've seen it in the Hubbard situation, is it's really tough to say in an attorney-client privilege situation where the money's coming from. You know, I mean, that is the issue. But, you know, if it looks like a fish and smells like a fish, it probably is a fish.
Well, we are talking about a senator that filed $34,000 worth of miscellaneous expenses last year.
That's true.
I've been in accounting a long time. There ain't no such thing as $34,000 worth of miscellaneous that the IRS is going to let you just go sweep under the rug somewhere.
That's a pretty nice petty cash thing there.
I would think
I
so.
would love to have petty cash like that.
The interesting thing is that it's a little over $15,000. Now, Bubba Grassley does handle property disputes. He's like the king of representing bingo halls. That's been where he is. Now, I wonder, do you think that Watley might be wanting a bingo hall of his own? Maybe he's getting in some bingo business.
Could be. Who knows?
I mean,
It's a big business, apparently.
Why does he need a guy like Grassley to be his consultant? What is he consulting him
As
on?
with the rest of his financial reports, it's a mystery.
Yeah, well, somebody needs to check into it. You know, this is what makes people not trust government.
Absolutely.
You know, not only did the police accuse Watley, the policeman accused Watley of beating his girlfriend, and lo and behold, she denies it, he denies it, the DA throws it out. You think the cop was lying?
No, and policemen have a code. I mean, they're not going to, a police officer, as having some experience in law enforcement, a police officer is not going to pull up on the scene of a sitting senator's house and make up a story on them. Right. There is no way they're going to do that. First of all, they will lose their job, and it's under scrutiny. They're going to tell the story exactly like it happened.
We know time and again, senators, representatives who have been pulled over for DUIs or pulled over for this or pulled over for that have been given a warning or taken home and let go. I think that anybody that's beaten up on a woman ought to go to jail in the first place, and the DA shouldn't dismiss it just because she said, "Oh well, sugar pie really didn't mean it or it didn't happen."
And she's one of the problems that, as you know, I worked with the YWCA for a number of years. And she's the typical problem that we have with domestic violence. And every time that we've encountered this as an organization, and I can speak, I'm a past member, but police in the towns were our best friend. They are the number one defender of women in that situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, this thing stinks to high heaven, as Jonathan has said. Maybe, Senator, you're talking about fishes. The Godfather said Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. You know, maybe Senator needs to go sleep with Luca Brasi.
I just want to say this. It all boils down to this. We don't have an ethics commission that does their job.
No.
They are useless. And, you know, they allow this to happen and for people to get away with this stuff. You know,
whatever it is should be investigated.
I mean, really.
It should.
But if you ask them, they'll give them an opinion supporting this. So let's don't get involved in it, okay?
Yeah.
You know, amazingly, when you write stories, you never know what's going to be the big story. It's sort of like a hit song. A lot of hit songs, the band thought, that's not going to be a big song. Then all of a sudden, bam, it's the biggest story, biggest song ever. Past week, Brandon Mosley did a story on deer baiting and feral hog baiting. It blew up. I mean, Jonathan, we got so many Facebook likes. It was ridiculous.
I was watching the shares and the likes, It was incredible. I had people who are not involved in politics messaging me saying, hey, that was a great article, and I thought, well, you don't read political stuff. I mean, it was an incredible story, just, and I had made a joke with you. I said, as much as people were interested in that, we could make a headline about Mike Hubbard and deer and probably get more shares and likes than we've gotten thus far with the trial.
Well, people understand deer baiting. They don't understand public corruption,
And Bill, this is a subject that comes up every year. I've sat and watched it in the Senate, and it hasn't passed. But I have to say, I was raised among hunters. We live among hunters back in Etowah County. This is something that's done every day. And one of the things that was pointed out is the concern that teaching children to hunt this way is not teaching them to hunt. It's teaching them how to kill.
Well, I tell you, I've never talked to a real hunter who thought that, deer baiting in this manner was a good idea. I mean, it's really not sporting to me. You leave, even if you leave feed in a certain spot all year long, and the deer get used to coming to that spot, and then they come by one day and you're sitting up in a tree, go boom. I mean, where's the sport in that? You taught it to eat in a certain spot so you could blow its brains out.
No, if you've got to track the animal and see where it's been and use all the hunting skills to kill it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're just baiting it to come and shooting it, that's assassinating an animal.
Right, I agree. It's just it's an odd thing. Now, feral hogs, I think you should be able to shoot them on sight. I mean, these are some mean, vicious animals, and I don't know if the bacon's any good. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Bailouts reward failure and punish taxpayers. You know that. Senator Shelby knows that. Then why is Washington so stupid? When the big Wall Street banks came with their handout, Shelby said, no way, stood firm, was the lead Republican voice against them. He refused to put hardworking Alabama taxpayers on the hook. Shelby's my kind of conservative.
Richard Shelby stands up to Obama every single day.
I'm Richard Shelby, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We took a look this past week, at SB 69, which is a bill that you alluded to. SB 69 actually is a well-intended bill. It would give committees the ability to subpoena not only department heads, but documentations. I spoke with the sponsor of that bill, Dick Brubaker. I think Brubaker's motivations are he is frustrated like so many, and he wants these guys to be honest about their budgets and the material that they give them. Many times, Brubaker said to me, they just can't get documents. So they wanted an ability to do this. North Carolina has a similar law. The problem is when Susan and I were looking at that statute, or what would be a statute, we found that it actually gives the power of the committee, it gives the person providing under the committee the power to immunize anyone that is before it for any criminal matter, and it also would require them to violate their Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination. Susan, I mean, it's just heinous.
It is heinous, and I don't think it was intended to be that way. I understand, and I've watched Senator Brubaker and his frustrations with these agencies and with the budget, and I understand why he went here. But when you say in the document, it says that you can come in, but you essentially can't invoke your Fifth Amendment right. And you have to go ahead and tell them whatever it is that they're seeking, even if it could cause you legal problems. But what they further do, which is what the troubling part is that they say that if you do that whatever documents and whatever testimony that you gave can't be used against you.
Right. And we use the example, Jonathan, of Speaker Hubbard's trial. The defense has received all the documents that the state will use to prove that Mike Hubbard committed the 23 felony acts he's accused of. Under this law, they literally could call, a Senate committee with a presiding person, anybody presiding over, doesn't have to be the chair, just whoever's presiding, can call Mr. Hubbard to testify. They can subpoena those documents. And if this were law, those documents could not be used in the trial against Mike Hubbard and none of his testimony.
I think, I understand what they're trying to do, but I think it's ridiculous to especially propose that at this time during what's going on and after the last 4, 6, 8 years we've had in Alabama, to even propose something like that to the people of Alabama is really like a slap in the face saying, hey, we're going to slide something else by you. Sure, we want to use it for good over here, but it can also be used for bad. Somebody's using some syrup somewhere because this thing is very slippery.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually the exact bill that was introduced in 2012 by then Democrat Joe Mitchell. It was, I think, 526. Exact same bill. So Brubaker said, hey, you got a bill that accomplishes. Somebody pulled that one down off the shelf that already had that messy stuff in it. And I had 2 senators call and said if you and Susan had not found that, it probably would have passed within it.
Now, as far as this bill, getting the agencies in there, making them say, give an oath, that's all good and fine. But that bit about the immunizing them has to come out of that bill if it's going to go anywhere.
Well, we've got a little less than 2 minutes. Joey Kennedy wrote an article this week. Joey writes for us, Pulitzer Prize winner, great guy. He's liberal, but in this case, boy, was he right on. Matt Butler has called for, has introduced a bill that says that you can carry a gun on a college campus. And however you feel about that, that's that. Okay, what he did. But here's the fact. You can't carry a gun, Jonathan, in the State House. I mean, if you can carry it on campus, why can't you carry it in the State House?
Well, I mean, I am an open carry supporter, and I believe you should be able to carry a firearm everywhere. And if everyone carried them, I believe we would have less deaths. And I understand you got to have security at a State House, at a Capitol, but at the same time, when you look at something like that, where is it fair? One law for the people. It's like, I remember the Barney Fife episode, one law for the police and one law for the citizens.
Yeah,
and that's what we deal with in Montgomery all the time.
It is.
Well, I was tempted to believe that it was because they're afraid somebody come down and shoot them.
I'm quite sure they might. They keep a close eye on that front plaza there, with people out there as well.
I think the other thing that Joey said, and it was in humor, but it's got some validity to it. He said, it's going to make me evaluate. He teaches, he's a professor at university. He says, it's going to make me evaluate how I handle grades. He said, because I give somebody else an F, and they go, boom, you're done. But it's going to be interesting how it plays out. But I would like for Representative Butler to address the issue at the State House, really.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good intention. It's got good intention all over it, but I just don't think this is
It does.
the time
And
or
you
the
look at all
place
the
to do
shootings
this.
that we've had. I mean, if some of these students had firearms, probably would have prevented some of the deaths. So you have to look at it both ways. This is a really tough issue.
Yeah, it is a tough issue. And it's the old saying, if only the bad guys have guns,
Yeah.
Well, that's
the way it is. But we're going to have to leave it right there. Jonathan, thank you for sitting in.
Glad to be here.
Susan, as always, great to have you.
Thank you.
All right. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them. See you next week.